Maybe I should have known something was coming when HR called at 6:58 a.m., but I still didn't think they'd be that ruthless. Because when they fired me at 7:03 a.m., they forgot I was the one who built their entire digital empire. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to sue. All I needed was 19 minutes and a single file. My name is Madeline Shaw, and for 12 years, I was the invisible architect behind StratusLink Technologies' $850 million network infrastructure. At 38, I'd spent my entire adult life building systems that connected over 140 branches across the country, ensuring that data flowed seamlessly from Denver to Detroit, from Seattle to Savannah. I wasn't the type who craved recognition or corner offices. I preferred the quiet hum of server rooms to boardroom politics, the elegant logic of code to corporate ladder climbing. I'd always believed that competence spoke louder than connections. That philosophy served me well under our previous CEO, Marcus Holbrook, who understood that technology wasn't just about flashy presentations. It was about the unglamorous work of maintaining uptime, securing data, and anticipating failures before they happened. But Marcus retired 18 months ago, and everything changed when Randall Keene took the helm. Randall came from a telecom background, which should have been reassuring. Instead, he brought with him a management style that prioritized loyalty over ability, appearances over substance. The shift was subtle at first: longer meetings about synergy, more emphasis on optics, and a gradual erosion of the meritocracy that had made StratusLink a tech powerhouse. The real blow came 6 months ago when Randall introduced his nephew, Troy Keene, as our new Director of Strategic Technology. Troy was 26, fresh out of an MBA program, and his entire tech experience consisted of managing his Instagram account and once setting up a WordPress blog. During his first all-hands meeting, he confidently declared that we needed to leverage blockchain solutions to optimize our network latency. I watched our senior engineers exchange glances. Blockchain had nothing to do with network latency. It was like suggesting we use a hammer to perform heart surgery. I kept my head down, focused on my work. The network didn't care about office politics. It needed constant attention, careful monitoring, and someone who understood that a misplaced semicolon in a configuration file could bring down communications for thousands of users. While Troy held meetings about disrupting our own paradigms, I was writing scripts to automate security patches, designing redundancy systems, and building the fail-safes that kept our infrastructure running at 99.97% uptime. But in Randall's StratusLink, being good at your job wasn't enough anymore. You had to play the game, smile at the right people, and most importantly, never, ever make the CEO's nephew look foolish, even when he was suggesting we replace our entire fiber optic network with 5G blockchain nodes, whatever those were supposed to be. I should have seen the writing on the wall. Should have started updating my resume the day Troy asked me why we couldn't just put everything on the cloud without understanding we were the cloud for many of our enterprise clients. But I was naive enough to believe that competence still mattered, that the critical systems I'd built would shield me from corporate politics. I was wrong. The breaking point came during a Tuesday morning architecture review meeting. Troy had called it to present his latest innovation, a complete overhaul of our network topology using what he called blockchain-verified packet routing. He stood at the whiteboard, drawing circles and arrows with the confidence of someone who'd watched one too many TED Talks about cryptocurrency. Imagine, he said, his marker squeaking against the board. Every data packet verified by blockchain before transmission. It's foolproof security. I tried to stay quiet, I really did. But when he started talking about replacing our BGP protocols with smart contracts, I couldn't help myself. Troy, I said, keeping my voice steady. That would increase latency by approximately 300,000%. A simple email would take 45 minutes to send. The room went silent. Troy's marker stopped mid-circle. Well, Madeline, he said, his jaw tightening. That's why we need innovative thinking. Maybe if you spent less time clinging to outdated methods. BGP isn't outdated, I interrupted. It's the fundamental routing protocol of the internet. What you're suggesting is like replacing a highway with a series of toll booths, where each car has to solve a cryptographic puzzle before moving forward. A few engineers smirked. Someone coughed to hide a laugh. Troy's face flushed red. I don't appreciate your tone. This is exactly the kind of resistance to change that's holding StratusLink back. I'm not resisting change, I replied. I'm resisting implementing something that would crash our entire network within minutes. If you'd like to understand why, I'd be happy to set up a basic session on network protocols. A basic session? His voice cracked. I have an MBA from Wharton. Which is impressive, I said. But it doesn't change how TCP/IP works. The meeting ended abruptly. Troy stormed out, leaving his incomprehensible diagram on the whiteboard. I thought that would be the end of it, a bruised ego that would heal once he found another buzzword to chase. I underestimated him. Later that afternoon, I discovered that Marcus Hoffman from Network Ops had recorded the entire exchange on his phone. By evening, the video had made its way to Troy, courtesy of Marcus's sudden interest in career advancement. The next morning, I received an email from HR about maintaining respectful dialogue with leadership and supporting strategic initiatives. But Troy wasn't satisfied with a warning. Over the next 2 weeks, he launched what can only be described as a campaign of professional sabotage. He scheduled urgent meetings during my critical maintenance windows. He CC'd Randall on emails questioning my collaborative spirit. He even suggested bringing in an external consultant to audit my network design, a design that had won 3 industry awards. The final straw came when he bypassed me entirely and instructed a junior admin to implement one of his optimization protocols on a test server. The server crashed within minutes, but not before corrupting 3 client databases. I spent 14 hours straight recovering the data, while Troy sent emails about how this demonstrated the fragility of our current system. Maybe if Madeline had been more open to innovation, he wrote in a company-wide postmortem, we could have avoided this incident entirely. I wanted to scream that his innovation had caused the crash. Instead, I documented everything, fixed the damage, and filed a formal complaint with HR about the security breach his unauthorized access represented. HR's response was swift, but not in the way I'd hoped. Madeline, the HR director said during our meeting, Troy feels that your opposition to his initiatives creates a hostile work environment. Hostile? I stared at her. He nearly destroyed 3 clients' data with his incompetence. He's learning, she replied. And frankly, your attitude isn't helping. Leaders need room to fail. Not with production servers. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This isn't a playground. When systems fail here, real companies lose real money. She leaned back, her expression sympathetic but firm. I understand your frustration, but Troy is family to Randall. And Randall has made it clear that supporting Troy is a priority. You need to decide whether you can work within that reality. I left that meeting knowing my days were numbered. In Randall's StratusLink, protecting the CEO's nephew's ego was more important than protecting our client's data. Technical competence had become a liability, and telling the truth was insubordination. I should have quit then, should have walked out with my dignity intact, but I loved the network I'd built. I'd poured 12 years of my life into those systems. I couldn't just abandon them to someone who thought SSH was a sound effect. That was my mistake. I should have known something was wrong when my phone rang at 6:58 a.m. Nobody from work called that early unless a server farm was on fire. But the caller ID showed Jennifer Martinez from HR, not anyone from my tech team. Madeline, her voice was professionally cold, rehearsed. I need you to join a video call. Can you log in now? I was still in my pajamas, coffee half made, my laptop across the room. Is there an emergency? I can be at the office in... No. The word came out sharp. Do not come to the office. Just join the call. I'm sending the link now. My stomach dropped. In 12 years, I'd never been told not to come to the office. I opened my laptop with shaking hands. The video call had 3 participants. Jennifer, someone from legal I'd never met, and Randall himself. No small talk, no good morning, just Jennifer reading from a script. Madeline Shaw, effective immediately. Your employment with StratusLink Technologies is terminated. This decision is final and non-negotiable. The words hit like physical blows. I stared at the screen, trying to process what was happening. I'm sorry. What? My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Terminated? For what? Jennifer glanced at her notes. Multiple instances of insubordination, failure to support leadership initiatives, and creating a hostile work environment for management personnel. Hostile work environment? I laughed, but it came out bitter. For telling Troy his blockchain routing idea would destroy our network. Randall finally spoke, his face a mask of corporate indifference. Your behavior toward Troy has been consistently unprofessional. He felt attacked, belittled, and undermined. That's not the StratusLink way. The StratusLink way? I felt anger replacing shock. I built the StratusLink way. Every system, every protocol, every line of code that keeps this company running. Which is all company property. The legal representative interrupted. Your access has been revoked as of 7 a.m. You'll receive information about your final paycheck and COBRA benefits via mail. I glanced at the clock, 7:03 a.m. They'd given me exactly 3 minutes to process the end of my career. You're making a mistake, I said quietly. That network doesn't run itself. Troy doesn't even know how to access the core routers. When something breaks, we'll manage, Randall cut in. Troy has assured me he's ready to take full ownership of our technical infrastructure. I almost laughed again. Troy couldn't take ownership of a GitHub repository without help. Let me be clear, I said, leaning toward the camera. You're firing the person who designed, built, and maintains your entire $850 million network infrastructure because I hurt your nephew's feelings by explaining basic networking concepts? Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. The legal rep's face remained stone, but Randall's expression hardened. We're firing someone who couldn't adapt to new leadership, he said. Someone who chose to be an obstacle instead of an ally. Troy represents the future of StratusLink. You, apparently, represent its past. Its functioning past, I shot back. But sure, let's see how the future works out when Troy tries to blockchain his way through a DDoS attack. This attitude, Randall pointed at the screen, is exactly why this decision was necessary. Jennifer, are we done here? Almost, Jennifer said. Madeline, you have 24 hours to return all company property, your badge, laptop, any documentation. Documentation? I interrupted. You mean the runbooks I wrote? The disaster recovery plans I created on my own time? The automation scripts I developed before I even joined this company? Any materials related to StratusLink operations are company property, the legal rep stated flatly. I took a deep breath. They wanted to play legal games? Fine. I'll return everything that legally belongs to StratusLink, I said carefully. Everything else remains mine. Don't make this difficult, Jennifer warned. Difficult? I leaned back. I'm being fired at 7:03 a.m. via video call for the crime of knowing more than the CEO's nephew. You passed difficult about 5 minutes ago. We're done here, Randall announced. Your separation agreement will outline the terms of your exit. I suggest you sign it quickly and quietly. And if I don't? His smile was cold. Then you'll find it very difficult to work in this industry again. I have connections at every major tech firm in the country. Do you really want to test that? The threat hung in the air. I stared at the 3 faces on my screen, corporate executioners who just destroyed 12 years of my life in under 10 minutes. Are you sure about this? I asked one last time. About letting me go? About putting Troy in charge of systems he doesn't understand? Goodbye, Madeline, Randall said, and the call ended. I sat in my silent apartment, staring at the blank screen. 7:09 a.m., 6 minutes to end a career. 6 minutes to validate every fear I'd had about corporate politics trumping competence. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd forgotten that I knew their systems better than I knew my own apartment. Every backdoor, every vulnerability, every single point of failure. and they'd just given me 24 hours to decide what to do with that knowledge. I sat in my apartment, still in shock, as memories flooded back, 12 years of building something from nothing. When I joined StratusLink in 2013, they were a mid-sized regional player with ambitions far exceeding their infrastructure. Their network was a patchwork of outdated routers, consumer-grade firewalls, and servers held together by prayer and duct tape. Marcus Holbrook had hired me personally. "We need someone who can build us a real network," he'd said. "Someone who thinks in systems, not band-aids." I was 26 then, fresh from a stint at a failed startup but armed with hard-won knowledge about what not to do. The first year was brutal. 18-hour days mapping existing systems, documenting spaghetti code, replacing equipment during 2 a.m. maintenance windows. I remember sleeping under my desk more nights than I'd like to admit, waking up to the hum of server fans and diving back into configurations. But I wasn't just fixing things, I was building something revolutionary. While our competitors outsourced their infrastructure to third parties, I designed a proprietary network that gave us complete control. Every router configuration, every security protocol, every line of code was optimized for our specific needs. The crown jewel was the distributed management system I created in 2016. I called it Hestia, Holistic Enterprise System for Technology Infrastructure Administration. It wasn't just software, it was an AI-assisted platform that could predict failures, auto-heal common issues, and manage updates across our entire network without human intervention. I built it using a combination of licensed tools and my own code, including modules I developed years before joining StratusLink. Here's the crucial part: I'd been smart about the contracts. After my startup experience, I knew to protect my intellectual property. The employment agreement specified that while StratusLink owned work created specifically for them, any pre-existing code or tools I brought remained mine. I licensed Hestia's core modules to them, but I retained ownership. Marcus had agreed, understanding that my expertise was worth the compromise. I also built in administrative safeguards, emergency access protocols that would let me remote in during catastrophic failures. What if you're on vacation when something breaks? I'd argued. Marcus agreed it was sensible. Those access points were documented, approved by the CTO, and renewed annually. Until Troy arrived, no one questioned these arrangements. Why would they? The network ran flawlessly. We grew from 15 branches to 140, from $50 million in revenue to $850 million years, and our infrastructure scaled seamlessly. While competitors struggled with outages and security breaches, we maintained 99.97% uptime. Our clients, including several government contractors, stayed because they could rely on us absolutely. I was the ghost in the machine, the one who knew every vulnerability because I'd patched them, every weakness because I'd strengthened them. I knew that Server Farm 7 in Phoenix ran hot and needed manual intervention during summer peaks. I knew that the Baltimore branch had a flaky router that required a specific configuration to stay stable. I knew the passwords, the protocols, the undocumented features that kept everything humming. More importantly, I knew what would happen without me. Hestia required manual updates every quarter, updates only I fully understood. The security certificates needed rotating on a specific schedule I'd never fully documented. The load balancing algorithms had edge cases that would cause cascading failures if triggered wrongly. Troy thought he was inheriting a network. What he was really inheriting was a complex organism that had evolved over 12 years, shaped by thousands of tiny decisions and optimizations. It was like giving someone a Formula One race car without teaching them how to drive, or mentioning that it needed special fuel, specific tire pressures, and a complete engine rebuild every 3,000 miles. As I sat there, anger began replacing shock. They hadn't just fired me, they'd dismissed 12 years of dedication, of innovation, of building something extraordinary. They'd chosen nepotism over competence, ego over excellence. I opened my laptop, my personal one, and logged into my development environment. All my original code was there, all my pre-StratusLink tools. all the documentation for systems I'd built before they even knew my name. I also had my copy of the Hestia license agreement, clearly stating my retention of core module ownership. Then I remembered something else. The emergency access protocols weren't just approved, they were required under our government contracts. Certain clearance levels mandated multiple access points for disaster recovery. I wasn't just allowed to maintain remote access, I was legally obligated to until those contracts were modified. Troy and Randall thought they'd fired a troublesome employee. They had no idea they'd just severed their relationship with the architect of their entire digital existence. They were about to learn that some knowledge can't be transferred in an exit interview, some systems can't be understood from documentation alone, and some mistakes can't be undone with corporate threats. I closed my laptop and finally made that coffee. I had 24 hours to decide how to respond. But really, they'd made the decision for me the moment they chose Troy's ego over my expertise. The network I'd built deserved better. And soon, they'd understand exactly what they'd thrown away. I spent the next hour reviewing contracts and documentation, my coffee growing cold as I mapped out exactly what belonged to me versus StratusLink. The beauty of being thorough, a trait they'd just punished me for, was that I'd kept meticulous records of everything. My plan wasn't about revenge or destruction, it was about clean separation, as surgical as any network partition I'd ever designed. I would simply reclaim what was mine and revoke access I was no longer obligated to provide. If their systems couldn't function without my intellectual property, well, perhaps they should have thought of that before the 7:03 a.m. call. I started with the Hestia modules. The license agreement was crystal clear. StratusLink had exclusive use while I was employed. But upon termination, they had 30 days to negotiate a new license or cease using my code. Since they'd terminated me effective immediately, with no discussion of transition, I was within my rights to begin the separation process. I wrote a simple script, elegant, clean, and completely legal. It would identify all instances of my pre-existing code modules and disable them, reverting systems to their base configurations. No data would be lost, no hardware damaged. The network would simply return to what it was before I improved it, functional but basic, like a smartphone stripped of all its apps. Next, I addressed the emergency access protocols. These were trickier because of the government contracts, but I'd found my solution in the fine print. The protocols required maintaining access by qualified personnel with appropriate clearance. As of 7:03 a.m., I was no longer StratusLink personnel. I drafted a formal notification to our government liaison, informing them that my clearance status with StratusLink had changed and requesting guidance on transferring access to a qualified replacement. I knew what would happen. Government contracts don't handle sudden personnel changes well. There would be reviews, audits, and mandatory waiting periods. Until Troy could prove he met the technical requirements, which would require certifications he didn't have, those systems would be locked in maintenance mode. The VPN certificates were the simplest. I'd registered them under my professional credentials, not StratusLink's corporate account. It was a cost-saving measure I'd implemented years ago. Why pay for corporate licensing when my individual certifications covered the same systems? Marcus had approved it enthusiastically. Now, those certificates would expire at midnight unless renewed by the registered administrator, me. I activated my perfectly legal script at 10:47 a.m. It ran for exactly 19 minutes, methodically cataloging and reclaiming my intellectual property. No alarms triggered because I wasn't attacking the system. I was using documented administrative procedures. Every action was logged, time-stamped, and compliant with the separation protocols I'd written myself. The first effects would be subtle. Custom automation routines would stop running. The AI predictive maintenance would revert to basic threshold monitoring. The elegant load balancing algorithms would default to simple, round-robin distribution. StratusLink would still function, but like a sports car suddenly limited to first gear. As the script finished, I composed 3 emails. The first went to legal, formally notifying them of the license status change for Hestia modules and offering to negotiate a new agreement, at contractor rates, naturally. The second went to our government compliance officer, alerting them to the personnel change affecting clearance-required systems. The third went to Jennifer in HR, confirming I would return all company property within 24 hours and had begun separating my personal intellectual property as required by my employment agreement. Then I did something they wouldn't expect. I documented everything, every system affected, every module reclaimed, every access point modified. I created a comprehensive transition guide that would tell them exactly what had changed and how to address it, if they had someone competent enough to understand it. I even included helpful notes. This function requires advanced Cisco certification to modify safely. This system will need new SSL certificates from an authorized administrator within 72 hours. Government Contract GS 7742 requires 24/7 monitoring by cleared personnel. Please ensure compliance. It was all perfectly professional, entirely legal, and absolutely devastating. I wasn't sabotaging their network, I was simply no longer maintaining it. The difference would become clear soon enough. By noon, I'd returned their laptop via courier, along with my badge and a USB drive containing the transition documentation. I'd fulfilled every obligation, followed every protocol, and protected myself legally at every step. I also sent one final email to my former team, the engineers who'd smirked when I'd challenged Troy's blockchain fantasies. I wished them well and reminded them that my personal cell would be off for the next 2 weeks while I took a much-needed vacation. They'd understand the subtext. I wouldn't be available for panicked calls when systems started failing. As I closed my laptop, I felt a strange sense of peace. I'd spent 12 years building something magnificent. Now Troy would have the opportunity to prove he could maintain it. After all, he was the director of strategic technology. Surely someone with an MBA from Wharton could handle a simple network operation. The countdown had begun. In less than 13 hours, those VPN certificates would expire. Within 72 hours, government auditors would start asking questions. And somewhere in between, Troy Keene would learn that innovation required understanding what you were innovating first. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and started updating my resume. It was 1:15 p.m., they'd fired me at 7:03 a.m., and in just 19 minutes of perfectly legal action, I'd set in motion their education in the true value of expertise. By 11:47 p.m., my phone started buzzing. I let it go to voicemail. The first message was from Marcus Hoffman, the same ops engineer who'd recorded my confrontation with Troy. His voice was panicked. "Madeline, I know you're not with us anymore, but something's wrong with the VPN. Can you please delete?" At 12:01 a.m., the VPN certificates expired. I imagined the cascade beginning. Remote employees suddenly disconnected. Branch offices losing secure connections to headquarters, administrators frantically Googling error messages they'd never seen before. By 6 a.m., my phone had logged 43 missed calls. I made breakfast and ignored them all. The real chaos started when East Coast branches began their workday. Without VPN access, entire offices couldn't reach internal systems. Sales teams couldn't access customer databases. Support technicians couldn't remote into client systems. The Phoenix data center, without my custom cooling algorithms, began overheating as the morning processing load increased. At 8:15 a.m., Jennifer from HR called from her personal cell. I let it ring. At 9:30 a.m., Randall himself called. This time, I answered. "Madeline." His voice had lost yesterday's corporate smugness. "We need to discuss the current situation." "Which situation would that be?" I asked pleasantly. "I'm on vacation." "You know damn well what situation. Our entire network is failing." "That's unfortunate," I said. "Have you tried putting it on the blockchain?" Silence. Then, "This is sabotage. We'll sue you into oblivion." "For what?" I kept my voice calm. I returned all company property. I removed only my personal code as required by our separation agreement. I notified all relevant parties about licensing changes. Your legal department has the documentation. You shut down our systems. I removed my licensed code. If your systems can't function without my intellectual property, perhaps you should have considered that before terminating my employment. I'm happy to negotiate a new license agreement. My consulting rate is $500 per hour. 4-hour minimum. He hung up. By noon, the situation had escalated beyond their ability to hide. 3 government auditors arrived for an emergency compliance review. Without proper clearance documentation for the new system administrator, Troy, they immediately flagged StratusLink for violation of contract terms. I learned this from LinkedIn, where former colleagues were posting increasingly frantic updates. Anyone know a VPN certificate expert? Urgent. Need someone with Hestia experience ASA. Does anyone have Madeline Shaw's contact info? At 2 p.m., a different number called. I recognized it as the StratusLink's main conference room. Ms. Shaw. A nervous voice I didn't recognize. This is David Chen from Goldman Tech Consulting. I've been brought in to assess the situation. Could you help me understand what's happening? Didn't Troy explain it? I asked innocently. He's the director of strategic technology. Mr. Keene is unavailable. He's been trying to restore VPN access for 6 hours without success. I almost felt bad for David. Almost. The documentation I provided explains everything. The VPN certificates need to be renewed by the registered administrator. You're the registered administrator. I was the registered administrator. Can you walk me through the renewal process? My consulting rate is $500 per hour. 4-hour minimum. Paid in advance. He paused. They won't approve that. Then I wish you the best of luck. By 4 p.m., the stock market had noticed. StratusLink's price dropped 18% in after-hours trading as news leaked about technical difficulties affecting operations. Tech blogs picked up the story. Major telecom provider experiences nationwide outage. One particularly astute blogger noted, sources indicate the crisis began immediately after the termination of a key technical employee. At 5:47 p.m., Randall called again. This time, his voice was different, desperate. Name your price. For what? I asked. To fix this, to come back, whatever you want. I want an apology, I said. A public one. Acknowledging that you fired me without understanding the consequences. I want Troy removed from any technical role. And I want a contract that prevents you from ever terminating me without a 6-month transition period. I can't do that. Troy is family. Then Troy can fix your network. Good evening, Randall. At 8 p.m., a courier delivered a letter from StratusLink's legal department. Threats of lawsuits, criminal charges, demands for immediate restoration of services. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who'd been expecting it. She responded within an hour, citing chapter and verse of why every action I'd taken was legally protected. By 10 p.m., StratusLink had lost 32% of its market value. Major clients were threatening to terminate contracts. The Department of Defense had initiated a formal review of their security clearance, and somewhere in Denver, Troy Keene was learning that an MBA from Wharton didn't teach you how to configure BGP protocols or renew SSL certificates. My phone rang one more time at 11:45 p.m., an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Madeline. The voice was young, exhausted, and broken. This is Troy. I need help. Please, I'll do anything. I'll resign. I'll publicly apologize. Just please. Help me fix this. For a moment, I felt the tiniest flicker of sympathy. Then I remembered him calling me resistant to change. Remembered the smug emails about my fragility. Remembered sitting in my pajamas at 7:03 a.m. being told I was terminated. Troy, I said gently, you wanted to own the network. Congratulations. It's all yours. I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow, I had interviews with 3 of StratusLink's competitors. They'd all called within hours of the news breaking, eager to hire someone who'd built an $850 million infrastructure from scratch. StratusLink would survive? Probably. They'd hire consultants, pay emergency rates, eventually rebuild. But they'd learn what I'd tried to tell them all along. Competence matters. Knowledge has value. and some things can't be fixed with an MBA and family connections. I never responded to the lawyers, never gave interviews to the tech blogs desperately seeking the architect who brought down StratusLink, never posted triumphant updates on LinkedIn. I simply disappeared into the silence they'd tried to buy with their threats and NDAs. Within 3 days, I had 7 job offers. Within a week, I'd accepted a position with Nebula Core Systems, StratusLink's primary competitor. My signing bonus alone was more than Troy's annual salary. My first project? Building a redundant network infrastructure specifically designed to capture StratusLink's fleeing clients. The industry newsletters told the rest of the story in stark numbers. StratusLink's recovery took 6 weeks and cost $14 million in emergency consultants, lost revenue, and government fines. They had to hire a team of 5 engineers to do what I'd done alone. The DoD contracts went under review, eventually transferred to other providers, including Nebula Core. Troy Keane lasted exactly 8 days after the crisis. His LinkedIn profile quietly changed from Director of Strategic Technology at StratusLink to Seeking New Opportunities. The blockchain revolution he'd promised never materialized. Turns out, you need to understand the old systems before you can revolutionize them. Randall Keane held on for another month. The board of directors, watching their stock price crater and their reputation crumble, decided that perhaps family loyalty had its limits. His golden parachute was substantial, but not substantial enough to restore what he'd destroyed with one phone call at 7:03 a.m. 6 months later, I received an unexpected email. It was from Marcus Holbrook, the old CEO who'd hired me 12 years ago. He'd been brought back as interim CEO to stabilize the company. His message was brief. Madeline, I heard what happened. I'm sorry. If you're ever interested in coming back, under proper terms and with proper respect, the door is open. The team misses you. Marcus. I stared at that email for a long time. Part of me missed the network I'd built, the systems I'd nurtured, the infrastructure that still, in many ways, felt like mine. But Nebula Core had given me something StratusLink never had. Respect. Here, my expertise wasn't a threat to anyone's ego. It was valued, protected, celebrated. I wrote back, "Thank you. Marcus, I appreciate the gesture, but I found a home where competence isn't considered insubordination. Best of luck with the recovery." A year later, at a tech conference in San Francisco, I ran into Jennifer from HR. She looked uncomfortable, started to walk away, then turned back. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I knew it was wrong. The way we handled it, the way they made me handle it. I left shortly after you did." I nodded. "We all make choices. You chose to fight back," she said. "Legally, brilliantly. But you fought. I wish I'd had that courage." As she walked away, I realized something important. I hadn't destroyed StratusLink out of vengeance. I'd simply stopped holding it together. There's a difference between attacking a system and no longer protecting it from its own incompetence. Today, I'm CTO at Nebula Core. I've built a team that values knowledge over connections, competence over charisma. When bright young MBAs join our company, the first thing I tell them is simple. Before you innovate, understand. Before you disrupt, learn. And never, ever underestimate the person who keeps the lights on. Sometimes, late at night when I'm reviewing network logs, I wonder about my old systems at StratusLink. Are they stable, secure, properly maintained? Then I remember, that's not my problem anymore. They made that abundantly clear at 7:03 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. But here's the truth they learned too late. Every company runs on invisible infrastructure, maintained by invisible people. The ones who answer calls at 2 a.m., who know every line of code, who build the foundations that executives take for granted. Disrespect them at your peril. Because when you fire the person who built your empire, you better make sure you know how to run it yourself. Troy thought he could blockchain his way to success. Randall thought family loyalty trumped expertise. They both learned that in technology, as in life. Reality doesn't care about your MBA or your connections. It only cares about what actually works. I was fired at 7:03 a.m. for telling the truth. And with that same precise, technical accuracy, I let them face the consequences before lunch. Some might call it revenge. I call it natural consequences. They wanted to run their network without me. I simply obliged. The fact that they couldn't was never my problem. It was theirs. And that, perhaps, is the greatest revenge of all. Not needing to destroy anything. Just stepping back and letting incompetence reveal itself. The network never lies. It only exposes the truth. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where are you tuning in from? Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're listening from. I love connecting with people from all around the world. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever experienced something similar in your workplace? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments.